In Mexico City South, I mean, there's the first official like stake, I guess, Ermita in Mexico, the first stake that was established, and then also one of the oldest meeting houses in San Pedro in Mexico and the whole country. So I mean, that's pretty significant. And there's obviously there's the temple there, which was the first temple in Mexico, and I believe one of the first temples outside of the United States. I mean, I don't know all my history on that, but one of the first ones in like the South America and Latin America area. So I mean, that's pretty significant. And that the temple itself wasn't inside my mission, but with Mexico City being so small and with so many people living so close together, I mean, we could get to the temple in like less than an hour or an hour depending on traffic. So I mean, it was all really close. But I mean, the thing that's unique about Mexico City South, I would say, is that we have that Ermita one, which was the first stake, and then we have that San Pedro, which was like one of the first chapels built, and they still use the original chapel. I mean, they built another one, but they still use it, even though it's like, I don't know exactly how old, but I think at least like 80 or 90 years old, or maybe even older than that. So I mean, that's pretty significant. And then just, I mean, because in my mission when I came, there was we had, I think it was 7 or 8 stakes or 9 stakes, I think, and then they built another. They reorganized the mission, created the Mexico City Chalco mission, and so some of our stakes went over there, and some of our stakes went to the southeast. So I mean, that's kind of unique, just the growth of the church in Mexico City South, because I mean, it's so close to like the airport and so close to everything that it's just really. There's a lot of members in the mission in Mexico City South just because of the high population. But I mean, it's pretty similar to all Mexico City. It's all really populated, but I think those two things are probably the most unique. And then just the special, I mean, the geography. I don't know if you want me to talk about the geography, but I mean, the geography about Mexico City South, one thing that's unique, and actually one of the areas where I was in is called Contreras. And most of the city is just like, I guess you could say, a city jungle, houses next to houses next to houses, and factories and things like that. But in this area, it's kind of more up on the hill, and so it's actually one of the larger areas of the mission, just because there's actually like a bunch of like, I guess you could say like forest behind it. So I mean, it actually does get pretty cold because Mexico City in general, I mean, not only just the South Mission, but it's pretty high in elevation. I think it's about somewhere around 10,000 feet, I think. I'm not exactly sure. I just know it's higher than here. So I mean, it does get pretty cold even though it is further south. So that was one thing that was kind of unique, being up there. I guess just being in the forest area. Actually had a lot of cool experiences up there. But so that was one thing, is kind of like being in a side of a forest inside of a city. So it was actually kind of a cool, neat part of Mexico City, because that's a lot of times that's not what you see. I mean, obviously people come to Mexico City to see the downtown area, and then they also have a park called Xochimilco, which is really unique in Mexico City, just because it has like rivers running through it, kind of like in Venice, Italy. So I mean, that's kind of cool. Obviously, as missionaries, we couldn't, go on any of those boats or do anything with the water and stuff, but just being able to see it was kind of cool. So I mean, that's kind of some unique things about Mexico City as South Mission comparing to other parts of Mexico City. So I mean, obviously most of Mexico is Catholics. I mean, that's a big thing. I guess just religiously, the culture, it's probably about 80% Catholic or so, or the ones that don't go to church, they say they're Catholic, just because it's become part of the culture. And then as far as like preparation, what I would say would be learn to work with members, because with Mexico City, this is kind of unique. At the beginning of my mission, they had us knocking doors and things like that. And I remember when I first arrived, we only did this for about like 3 or 4 weeks. And so it wasn't actually very effective, just because, I mean, in a city of like 25 million people, knocking doors, there's a lot of people that are at work that aren't going to be home. So it ends up being a lot of time wasted. And so what they had us do is they told us that after a certain point, we were not going to be allowed to knock any more doors unless we were strongly prompted by the Spirit to do so. So I thought that was interesting because, growing up, you hear about missionary work and tracting, and you think of going to knock on doors and things like that. But one thing that my mission president really stressed to us to do, and which I would suggest doing to prepare for mission, is just, he always told us to teach less active members and teach members. So we would even be teaching members about the restoration, the basic missionary lessons. And then he would always tell us to ask the 3 questions. That's what my mission president, I guess, for me, kind of like coined. So he said, who do you know that could benefit from what you felt? Like, we'd always change it a little bit, the question. If we taught about Joseph Smith, like we would teach an active member, who do you know that could benefit from, feeling the blessings of the restoration? And so we would always just ask, and who else? And who else? You know, we just keep asking those other questions. And then we'd always ask, well, when can we visit those people? And so that was something that was really effective because, you know, in Mexico City, you knock down all these huge apartment complexes with like 600 people that live there, but you only end up getting one appointment and it takes you 4 hours to knock every single door. But if you teach a member for 20 minutes, they can give you a referral, and then, you know, you're able to teach more families out of that, and then the families that you teach have a support system. So I mean, that was probably the biggest change I saw while I was down there in Mexico, the way that they work, because there's tons and tons and tons of less actives in Mexico City. In one of the wards I was at, there's about probably at least 1,000 members on the list, but attending the ward, there's about, you know, 100 to 150, give or take. And so we really strive to focus on teaching less active members, and we would teach them and ask them who they know, and half the time the people that they knew were, you know, their family members that hadn't been baptized yet that were living with them. So I feel like that was pretty effective. So I would say that that's definitely something I would recommend doing, is just learning the basic missionary doctrine, the lessons, and even just learning how to ask your friends if they know anyone that could benefit from, you know, feeling the Spirit, and just getting used to doing that, because I feel like that's a lot more effective. That's how we found a lot more of the people that we were going to baptize. I mean, obviously there's always that time when you're in the street, you're going to feel prompted to, you know, contact someone or whatever, but it's always a lot more effective, I feel like, to ask the members, plus it gets them involved, so the investigators have a support system. So I think that that's the biggest change that I saw as far as missionary work goes in Mexico City. So one thing that we started focusing on really, because I mean, obviously you have all the key indicators, you know, you keep track of investigators in church, but we actually started keeping track of less actives that would attend church as well. So we would, you know, focus on them, and from the less active families that we were teaching was where we actually often found most of our new investigators. I remember there's a bunch of different families that we would teach. We would just go down the list and find people and teach them, and we'd find out that they have, you know, 3 or 4 kids that hadn't been baptized yet. So then we would be able to baptize the kids after we reactivate the family. So I mean, that definitely helps, because it strengthens the whole family, not just, you know, because a lot of times it's not easy to join the church, especially because in Mexico the culture is so different between the Catholic culture and the Mormon culture, just because, I mean, the Sabbath day is a big thing, and, you know, the word of wisdom, obviously, and law of chastity, things like that. So, I mean, having a whole family makes it a lot more effective for the missionaries, because you feel better, and then for the investigators as well. As far as numbers, I'm not exactly sure on the exact amounts, but after we did that, I do know that our baptisms did start to go up, and the number of lessons we taught also increased, because we had the goal to teach 40 lessons a week, and it was actually, I mean, it's definitely doable, just because in a city like Mexico City, there's just thousands of people to teach, so we actually oftentimes would have too many people to teach, and so that's why, once again, we'd have to decide, all right, well, we need to focus on those who are going to progress the most, and so we would teach the less actives, because they had investigator family members, and then it'd be able to benefit the whole family, not just the one investigator that we're teaching. So I served from, I guess, MTC June 2012, and then, or July 2012, and then I finished in June 2014. Started my mission in Barrio Nativitas, and then after Nativitas I went to Barrio Reforma, and then after that I went to Contreras. And my third area, then my fourth area after Contreras was Iztacalco, and then after Iztacalco I went to Churubusco, and then after that, so that was my fifth area. Then my last area where I was there for one transfer was Coyoacan, and that's where I finished my mission. So I had 6. So they're all within Mexico City, just because the city is, I mean, it's huge, but it's all in one city. I mean, the areas were, some of them were pretty small, some of them were larger, but they're all within the same city limits. So